Okay, welcome everybody. I am Dr. Pamela Thomas. Welcome to the Online with the CMC, a quest to assemble cataloging board games. And Mary Cornell is going to take you on that journey. So go ahead, Mary.
Hello, all. Welcome to our Online with the CMC for September. Our topic today is A Quest to Assemble Cataloging Board Games. My name is Mary Cornell, and I am a cataloger here at the CMC. Our agenda today includes assembling the game, cataloging assessment, learning the rules, adding important fields for board games, sorting out the pieces, other games to consider, playing the game, looking at examples, and lastly, my resources. Firstly, we're going to look at assembling the game. I wanted to take a look at what might be considered a straightforward assessment, but with board games can be a bit more complicated. When I've cataloged a board game in the past, the first thing I do is look at all the labels, taglines, companies, rules, etc. that are listed on the outside of the box. A lot of times, you'll find the place and date of publication on the box itself. You may sometimes find rules, time of play, etc., that you might not find on the game rules that could be included inside the box. Um, for instance, we are going to look at our example of Monopoly Junior electronic banking. On the front part of the box, included on the right side of our slide, there are a few labels I've included. The first label on the left bottom of the box includes a few items of interest. Firstly, it lists that the game is meant for ages 5 and above. The box lists the game is meant for 2 to 4 players. And lastly, it mentions the banking unit included in the game requires 2 AA batteries. The next label on the bottom center mentions a warning that small pieces could be a choking hazard for any child under 3 years old. Next, we have a label on the far bottom right that includes that adult assembly is required, and then it mentions Hasbro Gaming. There are a couple of other labels that, according to cataloger's judgment, you could add as well, like the easy to play banking unit and or cards track your cash. As these are more taglines versus rules, I tend to personally not add them. Next, I will dig into the box and start assembling the game pieces, again looking at Monopoly Junior electronic gaming. This can include looking at if there's a game board, because sometimes board games do not have a game board, surprisingly enough, if there are rules and more. The rules of a game, if part of the items, are a great way to compare what you have on or in the box and to vitally make sure you have everything the rules states you should. This game did not have game rules, but the back of the box did include a contents list. The contents as shown on the right contain a game board, not pictured, banking unit, 4 bank cards, 20 chance cards, 48 sold signs, not pictured, die, not pictured, 4 character cards, and 4 game pieces, and 4 character pieces. It always is good to compare a contents list to the actual pieces because a missing piece in a game can be a huge bummer for a player. Next, let's look at learning the rules. When cataloging a game, there are some specific fields that a cataloger needs to consider. Firstly, a board game is cataloged in OCLC connection as visual materials or items. As shown in the example above, you have a few fixed fields that need to be coded differently than, say, a book. The type of item is R, or the visual materials code for three-dimensional artifacts. You want to make sure and code G in the TMAP field, as this denotes that the item is a game. In the tech field, you would use the code IN, as this item is neither a motion picture nor a video recording. So in my example record, there is an 007 because Mark Report gives you errors if you don't have one. As we all know, Mark Report is not updated often. However, OLOC's best practices states There is no mark field 007 coding for objects because there is no directly applicable 007 field that fits objects, and coding the unspecified mark field 007 adds very little value. Lastly, as seen in this record, an 024 is included. This was a field that was on the box. It has an indicator of 1 as the number is 12 digits long, making it a UPC number. Sometimes you will find a game that has an 082 field or a publisher number. That should be added in your board game records as well. Next, we're going to look at the 3XX fields and 5XX fields you could add. Firstly, you would want to add a 334 for multiple unit. This is considering that the game is made up of many pieces. The 336, 337, and 338 are all on OCLC bibliographic formats and standards for an object. OLAC does state that objects are almost exclusively the media type of unmediated. My example here is for the game Duck Duck 123. As you can see, because I had a ZZ field in my 007 field, I also needed to add some unspecified fields in the 337 and 338. Additionally, I have a 340 for the size of the box and a subfield B. Included in 340 fields as well are the description of color content in a subfield G and the base and supporting materials of different pieces of the game. If you have different pieces, as you do in a board game, you can note in a subfield 3 at the beginning of the field to specify the material you're describing. For instance, in this Duck Duck game, it had plastic ducks and hence received the 340 field sub-3 subfield 3 ducks and a subfield A plastic for the material type, and then finished with the RDA code of RDA matte, which denotes material type. The spinner included with the game had a base of plastic, but the supporting materials were made of cardboard. Hence, there is a 340 with a subfield 3 for spinner and a subfield E for cardboard, showing that it is a supporting material, or with objects, it's also considered the mount. Next, looking at the 5XX fields, I first grabbed the 521 for age of interest for the game, which was ages 3 plus. There are 500 notes for the number of players and the duration of gameplay, which is estimated at 15 minutes. You can also add a 505 for contents notes, which is encouraged by OLAC. I didn't with this game because of the number of pieces, but I do with most. And lastly, the 588 OLAC provides routinely supply a source of title note for objects which are more variable than other media. Cataloging objects commonly calls for cataloger's judgment to determine or devise a title. Commonly with board games, the title is taken from the container. And on to our last slide for learning the rules. Per OLAC, best practices, many objects are considered published for the purpose of cataloging, but are published, in quotation, in a way that falls outside the traditional concept of publication. An example, commercially produced furniture or clothing. As a result, such objects may carry only manufacturer information instead of publication or distribution information. If any of the elements for the manufacturer statement appear on an object resource, they should always be recorded regardless of the presence of publication or distribution statements. If a manufacturer information is not present on the resource but is readily available from other sources, it may be recorded if considered important. This is a really good example of what OLAC is talking about with objects. This first set of fields from Monopoly was cataloged by our former shared cataloger, Edie Elliott. As shown in the 264-1, this game was published by Hasbro in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. The game was distributed and manufactured, though, by Winning Games, Moves Games in Danvers, Massachusetts in the same year. This game has a copyright date of 1935, as this is for Monopoly, which was originally created in 1935. If you have a board game created by an individual, you can include them as a 100, Otherwise, most other creators, designers, etc., you will find in a 7xx field. For example, for the board game Azul, the 700 show here, there is an illustrator, producer, and two other publishers listed as well. Moving on, let's sort out the pieces. Other games you can consider when cataloging board games are mystery adventure games, card games, puzzles, and kits. I mention these other kinds of games as well, in short, because they can have similar considerations to board games with their cataloging. Some may be two-dimensional items like card games or jigsaw puzzles, but many of the rules that apply to board games can also apply to these kinds of games. The one I want to mention a little more closely are mystery and adventure games. We at the CMC sometimes catalog these as kits. However, you could justify cataloging them as board games too, depending on your organization and how they manage similar games. One such game we've cataloged that is an adventure game is Junior Explorers Switzerland, cataloged for Marshall Public Library shown above. The biggest difference between this game and board games is the fact that we catalog them as a kit. This means in the fixed fields, the type is O for kits and B in the TMAT, which also distinguishes it as a kit. However, many, if not all of the other fields are the same kind or similar kind of content as board games. Next, we're playing the game looking at examples of different board games. Our first example is looking at the board game Azul. I have a few fields I want to point out in this. For one, we have the 02X fields. In this record, there are three different 024s listed. This can happen sometimes because different UPCs might be listed on the box, or in some instances, additions from the same year may be added to a record. This is also true with the 028, which there are multiple fields for as well. Both of these fields are repeatable, so as long as the information is accurate, it can be added to your record. Lastly, on this slide, I just want to bring attention to the 500 note for playing time, which is 30 to 45 minutes. Some games have this on the container, others might have it in the rule book, but it is an important field to add. And then as shown partially in our example earlier, this record has a 100 for the game designer Michael Kiesling, as well as 7xx's for the illustration, producer, and publishers of the game. Our next example is for the electronic talking version of Battleship. Like Monopoly Junior Electronic Banking from earlier, this game includes batteries, which you will find in a 500 note. Also of note in this record is the inclusion of the 344 for sound. As this game does include auditory commands, this field is included to reflect that. You'll also notice the 340 fields for material types, which shows plastic for the pegs, ships, and the game board. There's a 340 for the material type for the container, which is cardboard. And lastly, I wanted to point out that unlike most board games, which are cataloged in 794 and Dewey Decimal Classification, this is cataloged as 794.85 as this is considered an electronic game. I've included this next example because it's a really interesting game mashup for those of you who are classic board game players. It is a mix of the classic game Sorry and the game Simon Says. This game has a 024 field for the UPC, which many games do have some variation of the standard number. This game includes in the 300s as well as the 340s the material type for different game pieces, including plastic for the base pawns and game unit, and cardboard for the game board. This game has on the container an age range of 8 plus, and that the game requires two AA batteries. This game is also part of a series, so if anyone is really intrigued, you might want to look that up. This is a special edition of the classic board game Clue. I'd like to point out the 300 and 340 fields looking at material type, As shown in the 300, there are some items made of plastic, metal, paper, and cardboard in this game. Some of you may know that some of the weapon pieces have probably always been metal, but now, in modern days, some are plastic. This record includes a 380 from the Art and Architecture Thesaurus created by the Getty Center of board games game sets. Per OCLC bibliographic formats and standards, you can use this vocabulary in the 380, but you could have also added in the genre heading puzzles and games in the 380. This record includes a 500 for the number of players, which is 3 to 6, and a 521 for the age range on the game, which is ages 9 and up. This record lastly contains publishers in the 710s, as not only is this published by Hasbro, but also by Parker Brothers. Lastly, I want to share an example of how we catalog mystery and adventure games as kits. I do include this because I've seen other libraries catalog these items as board games. This is the kit contents for Case of the Missing Eyes, which is a mystery game published by the Deadbolt Mystery Society. As you can see, much like a board game, it does have a fair amount of game components to consider when cataloging. As this is cataloging as a kit, it includes the fixed field elements as O in type and B in TMAT to indicate as such. There is also a 380 with the art and architecture vocabulary as well with kits sets. Beyond this, as with other board game examples, you can see this kit uses the same 336 for three-dimensional form and 338 for object. This record uses 340s with a subfield 3 to differentiate material type for items included in the kit. What may be a tad different is that this record also includes subject headings that pertain to the mystery. For instance, the 650 for missing persons investigation games. As this is cataloged as a kit, the record does not include the genre term for board games, but the broader genre term of heading of puzzles and games. Lastly, here are the resources used for my presentation. And then on the call today, we have Barb Scobie, Dr. Pamela Thomas, myself, Mary Cornell, Eric McKinney, Kat Anderberg, Blake Walter, Katie Roberts, and Andrea Giosta.
Thanks, Mary. Give me a second and I will allow people to unmute themselves, hopefully.
Okay, so right off, I can see.
Oh, is there standardized vocabulary
Yeah.
for the 3XX fields, especially the 340? Yeah.
Yes, that is available on OCLC bibliographic standards and formats. They have material types that are currently authorized, but also if you don't see a material type that you want to use in the 340, you can use the rare books and manuscripts vocabulary and add the subfield 2 of RBMS. I believe that's what it was off the top of my head.
Okay, and somebody asked if the slides will be available afterwards, and I said yes. The slides without the notes are available on L2 right now, and then after the presentation, the slides with the notes will be posted on L2, and we will also send out a link to the recording. And then Elaine asked if there are recommended reference sources or websites to help identify games, and I said that they should be on your resources slide.
OLAC has a very thorough guideline in my references and resources in the last slide. I would highly recommend that.
And anyone can unmute themselves right now if they want to go ahead and ask their question verbally rather than through chat. Nobody has any other questions? Okay. Are there any challenges you encounter with the description element that you feel is lacking?
I have had sometimes where, especially when I'm doing the mystery and adventure games, where there isn't material type vocabulary that's out there. Um, and that sometimes that can be a little difficult because you're sitting there trying to reconcile, like, how do I actually add this to the 340? What I have learned is you can add that material type to the 340, you just won't have a subfield to telling you where that vocabulary is from.
Okay, and Blake asks, I haven't worked with games much. I'm wondering how all this translates into the patron experience. How do patrons find games? Do they even do online searches for them?
Oh, goodness. So I know I can't speak too readily about many libraries in person, but I know that some of the libraries I've been, like Urbana Free Library, which is here in my area, they have a whole wall where they're just open and you can see every game that they have right there. So they have an actual section for them. Um, but what is also helpful, depending on how your library catalogs games. Some libraries still use the subfield H and the 245 to denote it as a game. So I think that would also be helpful for patrons as well when they're searching if they use an online search.
And there should be like a game icon that shows up
Yeah,
too.
that
And
too.
you should be able to filter if you're searching online. Okay, Greg asks, if we have questions as we are cataloging games, who can we contact? You can contact the CMC.
Yeah. And I
I
will
will
go
take
ahead.
that in. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I got it. It's the CMC at illinoisheartland.org.
Org. Yep. And we will answer that. Anna says, I know for kits, sometimes I will measure various components. Do you do this for board games ever, where you measure the parts of the game?
I do. Um, so and that's something that I feel like you either need to be consistent with or not. I'm curious about, and I did not search this, Anna, thank you for this question. But I did not search OLAC to see if they had a, say, a rule or a standard about, hey, should you have this all in the game? Usually if I do go through and take the time to do those measurements for different game pieces, what I will do is I will add that to the 505. So your contents note in the 505, and what I'll do is I'll make sure that the 505 is an enhanced 505, and then I'll usually add, if I have, say, color content or measurements, I will put those in the subfield G, which is where you can put additional information about, say, a piece or a song or so on and etc.
Okay. Anna says, oh, interesting. Okay, thanks. Esther says there was a hot topic in the AutoCAD listserv about board games and how to keep track of missing pieces. For example, if there was a puzzle with missing pieces, some AutoCADers had a weight of the game, other AutoCADers had a slip of paper regarding feedback about missing items. While I understand that this is a bit of an access services question, a lot of catalogers had much to say about this issue. Any advice?
Oh gosh. I saw that asterisk, so I understand. What I have done in the past when I've been working in a public library is there's two ways to make sure that that happens. For one, so this is the last public library I was working at, and this is how they handled it, and I thought it was great. For one, make sure it's noted on the item. That way, if, say whoever is checking it in or checking it back out um, is aware, in a physical way. But also what my library did that I thought was very helpful, if you can do this in your library system, to also add up a pop-up message within the record. So if you have like a local field, you can add a pop-up message in, go ahead and do that and note that there is a piece is missing. Try to be as descriptive as possible. Um, because honestly, that's something that way you're covered in multiple ways, and it can also assist you, say if you have a patron coming up and checking out that game and saying, oh, I don't even know if I want to take this if it's missing a piece, because some people are very picky about their games and will not do.
A lot of systems allow you to do private and public notes in the cataloging record, so you could put that information in both places. A lot of people like to have like checklists on the front of games and kits, so that especially when they are returned, right, the circ staff can go through that and make sure that everything came back that was supposed to be in there. So I think that's really helpful too. And then Elaine has a follow-up question. And where would you note the weight in the bib record?
If it's a weight for the overall game, I think I would put that in a general 500 note. A patron may not understand that, but at least it makes it a very accessible note for anyone looking at the record.
Were you going to show us something in L2, Mary?
Oh, my bad. I was going to check something really quick. Oh, yes, I did. I was going to go to our events, and we have a form here that I wanted to share out. I'm sure you're going to do it at some point too.
Yep. Okay, so Astrid says, just quickly noting feedback. Noted on item to make awareness, add a pop-up message and record and be descriptive, private and public notes, checklists on front, note weight in a 5XX. Thank you both.
Yes,
Okay.
yep, that's good.
Okay, yeah, so next month, as Mary's showing you, we are doing something a little different. It's called Stump the CMC. So we have that's a hyperlink there, that Stump the CMC, as well as the Stump the CMC webinar form. So we would love, and I'm going to put the link to the form. If any of you, some of you could send us some questions ahead of time, because we don't really want to start off the webinar with dead air. That would be super helpful. And even if you have a cataloging question, you're not going to be able to attend next month, feel free to fill out that form. And the form is on today's event in L2, as well as on the October Stump the CMC L2 event. So we would greatly appreciate that. Did anybody else have any other questions about board games or just cataloging in general? Are there prizes for those that can stump you? Oh, Lisa, we're grant funded, right?
I think pride
I think
would
pride.
be, yeah.
Yeah, I think pride is the prize. Yeah, sorry. But that was a good question. We don't even have CMC stickers, Anna, but yes, that would be lovely. Rhonda says we could definitely try to find something to stump you. That's great. Rebecca, the ALA Games and Gaming Roundtable is currently exploring the creation of a metadata committee. So connecting with y'all as a resource would be lovely. Oh, that sounds awesome. Melissa asked, do you ever use the GTTG vocabulary? Yes.
Yes.
And they have some really great terms, especially for tabletop games and other games that sadly, LC does not. Okay, any other questions? And we will send out a link to the recording. Mary, do you want me to just send it out? So typically, the presenter of only with a CMC does a transcription, like a customized transcription.
Yep. and I will get to that as soon as I can.
Do you
But
want me to just send out the link without that, and then
yeah,
we'll
that's
send it
fine.
out again with, okay,
Yeah.
because Mary's taking some time off, which is fine. So I'll go ahead and send out the link to the recording without our customized transcription, and then when she gets back, I'll send out a new link with the transcription customized. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'm going to stop the recording. No questions about cataloging in general either? Okay,